And if there's anybody out there listening that would like to attend, just let me know. We'll get a head count. And we're going to have a special video that we're going to play, and I'm going to narrate portions of it. It's on the colonization of the moon. It's an excellent video that was made by NASA, and it shows the plans that NASA has for colonizing the moon. There are tremendous esoteric implications in doing that, and that's the perspective that I'm going to shed the light on, whatever light I can shed on the subject. It's very interesting possibilities. So we'll talk about that. Are the rest of the people, are they coming, or what are they doing? Can you run out there and see?
Holler at them.
Pauline and Don.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of people,
Oh,
that are out there.
yeah.
So we got to get everybody rounded up, both on Zoom and here at our classroom in Rochester Hills, which we sometimes call the East Room. So I've got to go out of town
It can get cold. Come on now.
Friday. Are you cold, Victoria?
It's okay.
You okay?
Okay.
We got extra.
It's
you can
warmer
get your
up here.
jacket. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a vest.
Oh, you got it going. Oh, we got it going on. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, we're just taking a few minutes here. We'll get everybody situated. And we're going to talk tonight about the death of the Piscean age. And the other vignette was fire phenomena in spiritual development. And we'll discuss some very interesting things about spiritual fire.
Talk about that picture, the esoteric healing. What's going on there?
Esoteric healing, that's the front cover of part 2, Stress Disorders, by Dr. Douglas Baker. I don't know if our friends can see that on Zoom or not. Can they see that, Huli?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he discusses the stress disorders and how to use the backflower remedies for stress disorders. About 80% of the illness, Blavatsky said, I think Bailey said 90%. I think Baker said 90%. Baker was a medical doctor, but he was also, I believe, the most prolific author of esoteric books in the 20th century. And he talks about the stress disorders and the use of the backflower remedies as the antidote to diseases and health issues. Blavatsky said that in her writings that I think it was 80% of the diseases and illnesses were caused at the astral level. And I believe that's probably true, probably even more than that. And that they can be remedied through the use of the backflower remedies. So you see a lot of them around my house. I swear by them. I've used them for many years. And I'm an advocate of them. So there's still people out there, Randy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
I think that's it.
We just got to go.
Yeah. So anyway, we got to get started here. The first thing we wanted to talk about tonight is the death of the Piscean age and what we're experiencing in the world at this time, all the incredible things that are going on. My friends in England have advised me that they believe that the next 2 weeks are going to really be significant. So between what's today, November 30th,
Mhm.
and about the middle of December, there should be some very significant things that happen in the world. Who could have believed 2 weeks ago that the Chinese people, although many of us predicted it, would revolt through suppression brought about by the COVID-19 or the Chinese virus. It's happening. There's no telling how it will end, when it will end, and the long-term effects. I'm thinking that it'll be very positive. Things will come out of it. But that's what happens at the end of an age. What we're watching is we're watching the institutions of the Piscean age, institutions that have evolved over roughly a 2,000-year period, are crumbling, and new organizations, new institutions, new systems are evolving. It's almost a cliche to say that the whole thing of computers in the last 30 years is something that was incomprehensible when I was a kid, but we used to dream about it. You know, you'd see the Dick Tracy comic books, and he had a radio in his watch, and he would talk to the guys down at the police station, and all that's become a reality, and more is coming. And they used to argue 100 years ago about esoteric groups about the coming Aquarian age and what were the indications of the Aquarian age. Some said it was when Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic. Others said it was the invention of the radio. And they had all kinds of things. Certainly, it's the thing you have to remember, it's a gradual blending of the old age dying off and the new age being created. And that's what we've witnessed, certainly in my lifetime. I've seen enough of it to remember when television was a relatively new thing, and my dad sold televisions. The bad thing about it was he also had to repair them. And he wasn't very good at it. I remember one time he reached into the back of a TV with a screwdriver and threw him across the room. So you have to be careful with some of it, but those were the early days. You know, black and white TV,
Tubes.
all the tubes,
Sure.
yeah, Phillips tubes and things.
Or the tester tubes.
So we've certainly have come a long way, and it's this dying ending of the Piscean age and the birthing of the age of Aquarius that we're experiencing now. It's an incredible time to be alive, and we have all chosen to be here now at this time. There's something that we can do, I believe we are doing, just through our little group meetings here, through our Zoom, our friends who are on Zoom around the world, the people who tune into the YouTube videos that we post. Gain a lot of information, a lot of it's new. We talk about new teachings. We've said it before, but we're saying again that the prophecy stated that there would be 3 outpourings, and they would begin in 1875, and every 50 years roughly, there would be another outpouring. Certainly 2025, 1975, were these tremendous outpourings up to 2025, which is supposedly, I believe it is, the externalization in 2025 of the spiritual hierarchy of the planet will externalize. And they will aid mankind and make their presence known on earth. And that'll be really a glorious thing when that happens. One of the things that's interesting about Pisces, we never experienced really the that the dearest hopes and wishes of the Piscean age were never realized. Things like the universal brotherhood of mankind, all of the dearest hopes and wishes of the Piscean age will be realized in the age of Aquarius. And we have that to look forward to. We're already beginning to see some developments in the world of tremendous changes in world governments. We're at the tip of an iceberg, an immense iceberg that's changing the planet really for all time. Hopefully we'll soon witness the death of communism, which some have said in the past was an experiment by the spiritual hierarchy that ran afoul, didn't work out very well. And you can kind of expect those things to happen in the Piscean age, where there is efforts to bring new things in, and then they fail. Things like the League of Nations was inspired by hierarchical forces. And the United Nations, which has been in the last 20 or 30 years a real disaster for the planet. Hopefully it'll get straightened out. Maybe it'll have to be completely destroyed. It'll certainly have to be re-energized. And something will take its place, or it will morph its form and shape, will morph into something more significant, more important, and better serve the needs of the planet in the Aquarian age. One of the things that happens a lot of times to people who are born under the sign of Pisces, we're talking about the death of the Piscean age. And if you look at it microcosmically, you realize that people who have either Sun in Pisces or Pisces ascendant. I have a friend who's a double Pisces, and it's really, really true for him. They get to the end of their lives, excuse me, even when they're theosophists, if they're Pisces and they feel like they're a failure, they feel like they've failed in life. Not all of them, of course, but there is safe to say that there is a very high percentage of them who feel despondent, let down. Their dearest hopes and wishes were not realized. We're talking about the 12th house. I can remember looking at a horoscope. I think I've told this story here once before, of a revelation that came Hieronymus through observing the 12th house of a friend's horoscope. And I was able to accurately, I believe, assess his karma and his dharma and what he was experiencing in this life, and how it had come through as a product of certain failures and neglect in his previous incarnation, which took place in India. And he had abandoned his family in that life and went to Tibet. His curiosity was piqued, and he was interested in, although a Hindu, he was interested in Buddhism. And he took off, abandoned his family, and lived in a lamasery or lamasai in Tibet, lived out his life. He reincarnated in this life It all seemed very wonderful and natural in the beginning, and it was. There was a familiarity about it because the woman he married in this life was the same woman he was married to in a previous incarnation. And the children were the same children incarnated now in this lifetime in America in the 20th century that he had abandoned in the 19th century when he left India for Tibet. He said to me, in this house, he visited. And he said to me, well, I got to get home. We had come for the weekend. He gave a talk in this room. And the next morning when I got up, he was all dressed and packed and ready to go. I was just getting up. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, my usual time to get around. And I said, are you ready to leave already? Oh, yeah, I got to get home. I said, well, let's have some coffee and have a piece of toast or something, and we can talk. I said, very anxious to get home. Yeah, I got to get home because my daughter will be waiting for me. And I said, well, yeah, that's, your family, your daughter still lived at home. And he said, when I leave, she sits in front of a clock on the table and she watches that clock until I get back. And I said to him, with all of the love in the world, through the observation of your horoscope, I can tell you that your karma is with your children, and it's manifested as unfulfilled dharma from your previous incarnation, where you abandoned your wife and children to flee to Tibet. His disappointment was with his children, who are now well into their 50s. The daughter still lives at home. The wife's got him on a real short chain, if you know what I mean. The astrology works. That's all I can tell you. The astrology works. The new astrology we're talking about. We're talking about esoteric astrology, where we read the glyphs and turn the aspects into sentences. I don't see people doing that other than in a group that has come out of England and is spreading the teachings now largely in Europe and some here in America. It's an incredible thing. And it will be the astrology of the new millennium, esoteric astrology. We talked about the quantum physics and how it's applied to the astrology. And all of these things are helping. Everything that I'm telling you is helping to destroy the Piscean age, where in the Piscean age, the spiritual work of the disciple was individual. In the Aquarian age, it's a group. We're a group here, a group of people who periodically gather and have done so throughout the COVID epidemic. And I'm very, very pleased that we've been able to do that without fear, without prejudice. We all showed up every Wednesday, just like clockwork, at a potluck dinner and had lectures, various lectures. And we're continuing that work for at least as long as I live and am capable of doing it. But what we're concerned with is this whole idea of the death of the Piscean age and the birthing of the age of Aquarius. And the birthing process, as we've said many times, is a very difficult and stressful time. And if you're feeling stress, there's a lot of reasons for it. Not just COVID, but the entire world is undergoing dramatic change. We spoke earlier about the Schumann resonance of the planet and how for 10,000 years, this resonance, a measurement of the vibration of the planet, was around, I think it was either 7.3 or 7.8. It's now as high as 20, and in some days it has ranged to 200, which is almost incomprehensible that it would be that high. And people are feeling fatigue, worn out, drawn out. And that's a big part of it, is that we're, as the old teacher used to say to me down in South Africa, he would talk about atomic vibration, a lower atomic vibration, a higher atomic vibration. That's what I'm talking about right now when I talk about this resonance of the planet and the Schumann resonance, and how we measure the resonance. And the latest resonances have been extremely high, just extremely high, for good reason. And it's probably a combination of the solar flares, the sun's solar flares that have increased so dramatically and are so huge, disproportionate to anything in the past. Immense expulsions of energy from the sun. And it has its effect. And so hopefully that will answer some of your questions that you might have about some of the things that are happening in the world, things that you're experiencing as we're moving from one age, one century, into another, and into a new millennium, into the third millennium. The other thing that we said we wanted to talk about is the whole idea of what was the second title was for tonight was fire phenomena. Fire phenomena. And what causes fire phenomena? What is it really? It comes through harmonious. These books that surround you in this room are books of harmonious. Any of the esoteric classics are books of harmonious. They stimulate the neurons in the brain that are dormant. If you want to change yourself, you can read these books and they'll stimulate dormant neurons in the brain. That's the whole idea behind reading the secret doctrine, other than to get some information, is to stimulate neurons in your brain that you're not using. The reading of the books will do it because they're of a higher mental origin. Madame Blavatsky, the great Russian mystic, the doyen of theosophy, they called her the Russian Sphinx because of what she brought into the world. But that was just the first outpouring. That was just one of 3 outpourings. She told people not to make a religion out of it, but they did, to her chagrin and to others. But that's what people do. They did the same thing with Alice Bailey. They have groups that have found her teachings, and there's always conflict whenever you talk to a lot of those people, the members.
Excuse me.
And here we are now, probably really about another 125 years away from the actual age of Aquarius, but it's birthing, it's coming in, and we see it, we identify it. And we're watching the collapse of governments and corrupt politicians, and the changes that are taking place in religion. And it's an incredible time. It's just an absolutely fabulous and wondrous time to be alive. But getting back to the fire phenomena, I always tell people the thing for me that worked, not even knowing at the time what I was doing 50 years ago, was reading the books. I not only read the books, but it became to me an awareness of the importance of keeping a spiritual diary, a diary that was both of my dreams and of my spiritual experiences, as well as the events of the external world. And what happens as the spiritual fire begins to be experienced by the novitiate is that you begin to see the meaning in all things. You read the outer world, what we call the gloss, sometimes we call it the dross of the outer world, and we see the symbols in it and its meaning. We are able to interpret our dreams. We begin to develop conscious mediumship. Blavatsky was a conscious medium. I have known other conscious mediums in my life, extraordinary people who remember the day they were born. They remember past lives. Those things are to be expected. But one of the things that happens during certain stages of the spiritual fire, the development of spiritual fire, is your body changes, your perceptions change. I forget who it was right now that said it, but the whole body becomes an eye. Through things like synesthesia, people are able to hear color. They're able to see sound. They're able to have all kinds of incredible psychic powers, changes in their perception that are what I call superhuman, beyond the realm of the average human being. We've talked about some of the experiences in the past that I've had, and I believe that it all came about from a series of disciplines that I was able to initiate in my life many years ago. And I was fortunate that I could meet some very powerful teachers along the way. And for that very reason, that's kind of why I have these classes here at the house. is to share these ideas and these truths as I have experienced them in my life. I always tell people, support the Theosophical Society. It's a little bit in the doldrums right now, but it'll be energized soon. And it's a good organization. It was founded on the proper principles, as you would expect, by the initiates that were had externalized in the world at that time. And when you've done sufficient study, I always tell people, because I always have people come to me with books. Oh, you got to read this book, and you got to read that book. And what you really need is you need to have systematized study. You need to read the esoteric classics. Hopefully, for some of them, you can read them like with Bailey and Baker. You can read them in the order that they were written is very helpful, because it's like building a pyramid. You start with the foundation, and then you build up and up to the height of a capstone. And meditation is such an important key in the process, because through the meditation and the reading, you begin to construct out of mental substance a bridge of consciousness that links the soul to you. It's called the Antakarana, a bridge of consciousness, a bridge of mental substance between the soul and the personality, is the way I say it. And it works. I vouch that it works. I've told people many times, if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. You just have to discipline yourself. And you'll see results. But you have to have a certain amount of willpower to sustain it and to keep it going. So if you go home tonight, get a pencil and a piece of paper, or a notepad and a pencil, just an old B2 pencil like you had in school. And write your dreams down in the morning if you can remember them. If you can't remember them, then tell yourself out loud, I will remember my dream tonight. And the next night, do it again. And eventually, if you persist, you'll begin to remember your dreams. And it can be very rewarding. Even sometimes just the simplest things will happen. I told a story that just happened here a couple of weeks ago. Watch that rocker, because her paw is right under your chair. So you'll have to move your chair a little bit to the other direction. There you go. So I was absolutely frustrated. I had lost the keys to my sister's car. And I knew that I probably had packed them up somewhere, but didn't know where. My sister died in July, and I've got the estate and all of the property, and it's really turned into a job. And so I had a dream, and in the dream I found the keys.
What?
And 3 days later, and this happens to me all the time, 3 days after I have a prophetic dream, it will happen. Sometimes the next day. So 3 days later, I was home from Indiana, and my sister's home. And I walked into the den. There was a laundry basket just filled with all kinds of stuff. I didn't say or think anything. I just started going through the laundry basket, and there at the bottom of the laundry basket were the keys to my sister's car. It's insignificant in one way and very significant in another way, you know. You shouldn't use spiritual gifts for perhaps such meaningless things, but I didn't feel that I had any control over it, and it worked out perfectly because it helped me find the keys, which were important because the battery was dead. I had to get the car charged. I had to have the keys and all of those things. So sometimes we're given aid or direction or find things that we're looking for that are lost. And the thing that is most often lost is the relationship between our personalities and our souls. And one of the ways that we can gain that is through the development of the spiritual fire that comes about through what the Theosophists say, study, meditation, and service to mankind. That triplicity will change it actually opens, it helps open the third eye. It creates the lens for the third eye. Some people have done it in previous lives and can again do it in this life. Some people are just now developing that third eye. It's a picture of it here behind me, I think, right here. There's a picture there of the head of Minerva. It's showing the phenomena, the event that takes place at the time of the opening of the third eye. And they see there's a lovely painting. There's one of Manly Hall's in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, which I highly recommend. I had two of my two most important teachers in my life were both friends of Manly Hall's, Douglas Baker and Dr. Joseph Busby were very good friends with Manly Hall, who, of course, himself was an initiate being of a high degree. And this fire that people talk about, they talk about Kundalini, and in my experience, there is no rising of the Kundalini from the base of the spine to the Sahasrara, to the crown chakra. It's actually, in my experience, and other people who I've known who have had true fire experiences, is that it's a fire that descends. Baker once said to me that the idea of Kundalini rising is an esoteric blind. It's to throw you off track. The teachings are full of esoteric blinds, that the real fire comes from above downward. And I can remember this friend who I'd spoken about earlier who had abandoned his family. He had a little boy who he taught an art class on Saturdays, and children as young as 6, from 6 to 16, would attend the art classes. And it was a little boy who drew a picture, childlike picture, of a man. He had a square head, and above his head was a snake, and the snake was biting his head. And the symbolism of that is just extraordinary, because that's a good symbol of what happens with the descent of fire, that this serpentine fire is actually comes from above downward. And this little gifted little boy probably in some previous life in a lamasery somewhere in the world, in a Buddhist temple somewhere, had learned these secrets and brought them with him at a young age into this life. It was an extraordinary, and he made a copy of it. In fact, I think in one of the pieces of artwork I have in the house, this friend replicated this image of the snake biting the man with the square head, the snake biting him. I'll have to look for it. It's in the den. I'll see if I can find it. I think I know where it is. It's an extraordinary picture. But here's a little child, you see. And these children are being born into the world, these super gifted children who come in with an understanding because they've had fire experiences in previous lives. And the reincarnating permanent atoms of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas are enlivened, and they have a recall of things from past lives and experiences. Many of us can remember experiences in our past lives. I don't know how far back you can go, maybe 1,000 years, maybe 20,000, maybe further than that even. I think a lot of people, as we're entering this new age, are people who have had fire experiences. They've had a consciousness that has expanded from lifetime to lifetime, which is really what it's largely about. And they bring those memories with them into this incarnation, which is so vital in the world because, as we said earlier, the Piscean age is dying and the age of Aquarius is being born. And they bring with them these memories from these previous incarnations, and they tell stories. I can remember the guy that I went to college with was in an art class, and one day he was telling this story about how he had a childhood friend and how they would make up games and created their own language that they used, the two of them. And he said to me one time, he was an unusual character, gifted beyond belief, this guy. An artist like you just couldn't believe what an artist this guy was. And he said to me one time that he believed in reincarnation and that he thought that many of the things in the games that he played were reenactments of previous lives. And of course, I think that's exactly what it was. If we think, I know in my own childhood, I had fondnesses for groups of people and cultures and civilization, and it would change every couple of years. It would change, where there was the American Indian experience, and then it was the King Richard experience in England, and fighting in the Crusades, and all of those things that came into my consciousness, but that they were probably being stimulated by the soul from the previous lives that I had lived. I don't have any other explanation for it. It didn't come from watching TV. It came from within, something that was very deep within me. What time is it anyway? It's 1/4 after. Are these supposed to be 45 minutes or are they 60 minutes? Do you know?
Usually total 60.
It's a total for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So we had time for question and answer time, and right?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
have, if anybody wants to ask question, yes.
Okay. Does anybody here have any questions about anything, Randy?
Yeah, what is the closest definition that you have to the Schumann resonance? Is this a global thing?
There was a guy named Schumann who invented a system of measurement. I think it was electronic, and that he could pick up on the electronic stimuli pulsations of the planet, and that they measured around, it was either 7.3 or it was 7.8. I'll have to look it up. Seven,
Indicating that it was low
yeah. Then well, that's just what
compared to what it is now.
yeah, and that he said that he believed that it had been at that level, 7.3, if I'm correct, that it had been that way for 10,000 years. It had been virtually unchanged for 10,000 years. And that the recent scientists are saying that the recent changes in the resonance are registering around 20, from 7.3 to 20, and that they have had measurements as high as 200, which is astronomical difference. And friends of mine in England say that, who were discussing this very thing, said that yes, they could feel it and sense it, and that one of the effects of this increased resonance of the planet is that where our bodies are being adjusted, we're assimilating this change, and that it's causing fatigue, mental and emotional and physical fatigue. It's very stressful, and which is understandable. Yeah.
In a talk you gave, I think 2 or 3 months ago, I think Douglas Baker said that society traumatizes or makes drama out of, is this our anxiety level that's connected to the human resonance?
It's the effect of the Schumann resonance is that it's causing us.
Is it anxiety?
Sure, anxiety,
Unrest
stress,
or-
absolutely. Yeah. How many people have you talked to said, I can't sleep at night? Or I require too much sleep? Or so it's all of those things are all a part of that. And everybody you talk to is feeling it in one way or the other. I mean, certainly the people I talk to.
And it's connected to the solar flare?
Yeah, and they believe, I believe, that this increased expulsion of solar fire, solar energy, is causing it. And what it's doing is it's doing something to our atoms, the atoms of our bodies, our brains, our physical bodies are going through probably a birthing kind of a renewal process. This like a rebirthing kind of a thing. We'll know more in another probably a year or two. You know?
Could the solar flares be contributing to radiation to our bodies in some way?
No,
I
that's
don't-
a cell phone.
I don't know. I
No?
don't know about that. I don't think in a harmful way.
No.
If it is, it's not in a harmful way. Anybody else?
The other thing that I had was, can you give us a clear, distinct definition of a monist? A monist? A monist? You mentioned-
Manus.
Manus?
Monist?
Yeah, manus, manus.
Whatever.
It's mental plane.
Oh, it's a plane.
It's mental. It's the mental plane. we've got charts and graphs here that explain it perfectly. But yeah, manas, man, means to be a thinker, is a derivative of the word manas.
Okay.
Manu, manas, man, they're all derived from the Sanskrit is the origin.
Okay.
Is manas, which means mental. We're thinkers.
Okay, we're thinking.
Mhm.
And can you give us a clear, clean definition of monad?
Monad. Yeah. That's a good question, man. That's the soul divine. That's the real identity, the singularity of the one being who is expressing himself through 63 billion monads on the earth who are seeking expression. Our monads, we call them souls, but the soul is an expression of the monad. It's the monad that is connected to the one being.
The divine.
Yeah. And so we refer to them, certainly in the English ashram, as the monad is the soul divine. It is like the super soul
Okay.
is the monad. And it's said that there are 63,000 million monads seeking expression on the earth chain of evolution. That's 63 billion monads. Right now, at one of our talks recently, we said that the world population had just reached 8 billion. We have no record that shows that there were ever more people on the planet than there are now. There may have been. We don't have any record of it. Was it in Lemuria? Was it in Atlantis? Was it on the Hyperborean continent? Was it before there were physical human beings? I don't know. But what we do know is that there are 8 billion people, and that these 8 billion people are cycling from the lowest level to the highest levels. Not all of them. Some of them are only getting just, into maybe Devachan if they're lucky, and then incarnating again. And what it does is it builds a pressure. 8 billion people builds a pressure on the wheel of rebirth. And the wheel of rebirth, we've talked about it before, it's worth mentioning again. The wheel of rebirth is speeding up because there are more souls. And the more souls there are, the faster, the shorter the time between death and rebirth. And so people are being born with memories. I had a little boy, little blonde-haired boy, real thick glasses in England. And he, like myself, had remembered dying in a war where he'd run into a bunker. The bunker blew up and he was killed. And I asked him about it. And he was kind of startled. He said, yeah, that's what happened. I went in and I ran into a bunker, and the bunker was hit by a bomb and blew up, and I was killed. And I had a kind of a similar experience when I was little, recalling my previous life and death in World War II. But yeah, monad, that's the best explanation. It's the spark of the divine that's expressing itself through a soul, which is expressing itself through a mental body with a personality and a physical body and an emotional body or emotional. Yeah, Tracy.
Well, I was just going to make a comment about the rebirth
Yeah,
happening so
yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
and its correspondence to the gender dysphoria.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
People have no explanation.
Exactly.
First going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing that's happening in the world. You hear these both men and women say, well, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. I'm a man trapped in a woman's body. It's because they've had 20 or 30 lives. as a male or a female. And then suddenly, because of this increased rapid death and rebirth cycle that's happening in the world, they take on a physical body of a man after having maybe lived 30 lifetimes as a woman. And it's a shock. And their reincarnating permanent atoms has all the memory of 30 lives as a woman. Now he's in a male body. So that's the real explanation for it. One of the things that's interesting about that is just through my own investigations, I've discovered that there are a lot of homosexuals who have gravitated to the esoteric, looking for answers of why they are the way they are. And I don't know any of them that have ever found the explanation that Tracy and I just gave on the subject. But it's full of homosexuals, especially the Alice Bailey group. Theosophy too, but it's been very pronounced and noticeable in my experience in the Alice Bailey group. Anybody on Zoom tonight that has a question? We're open to for the next 5 minutes. Got to be somebody out there. Americans don't do real well when it comes time to ask questions. Yeah,
I got
Tracy.
one. Okay.
Tracy's got one.
This is kind of an offbeat one, but you were talking about fire, even though it's not like spiritual fire, but
Mhm.
did you hear about the four cars that caught fire that were supposed to be?
Almost nothing. Yeah, what'd you hear about that?
Is that the Florida fire?
No,
Nantucket,
Biden.
in
Biden.
Nantucket.
Biden's cars. Did
All
they-
four, they're different brands, so
Mhm.
they're not all the same
Mhm.
company, same
Mhm.
make. But they're all from the Hertz rent-a-car in
Okay.
Nantucket. And when the president went for the Thanksgiving holiday, his family was supposed to rent those four cars.
Hmm.
But what happened was they didn't end up renting them. The FBI and, their secrets or whatever, their people ended up renting them. They took them back to the Hertz rent-a-car, and all four of those were parked like facing each other,
See
two
if we
cars
can
and
get
two
the
cars in the
camera.
parking lot.
Turn this
And
camera around.
Just all of a sudden, the engine or whatever caught fire
Oh,
in the
no,
whole
just
front
like that.
end of all four cars. The engines just like spontaneous combustion is what they're saying, just caught fire and burnt the whole front.
Yeah,
So like, wow.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something.
What kind of a symbol is that?
Exactly.
Where's the message there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
let's
front end,
see.
the engine that runs the vehicle
Mhm. Mhm.
spontaneously combusted.
All four cars.
And they're saying that they don't know what caused it.
Mhm.
I don't know but that was after they returned them.
Mhm.
After they return, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
just interesting, some food for thought.
Yeah, I got a question for you. This is not esoteric. We're talking off the cuff right now, but
We're feeling this.
something happened to Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham. Did anybody hear anything about that? He's vanished from TV. You don't see him anymore. He had this thing. He was on TV every night, asking for donations. And somebody had implied somewhere along the line, either on my conversations with people or on TV, that he'd gotten into some kind of trouble. And you don't see him on TV anymore. Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son. Yeah. Raising money for the Ukraine or something. They were trying to help. But I forget what the group is. He's not on it.
Yeah. And the other thing's the big protests in China.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's huge, right?
Sure it is. Absolutely.
And they're not.
They're protesting in Brazil. You know what they're protesting about? Corrupt governments, corrupt elections. Mhm. Brazil.
Yeah.
Millions of people. out on the streets in Brazil. It's happening all over the planet. You just don't hear about it. It's either purposely being suppressed is the only thing I can think of.
All right.
I can remember seeing a photographs a friend sent me from England that were taken in, I believe it was in Romania, of 1 million people protesting in the streets in Romania. And it was related to COVID and corrupt politicians in Romania. You know? So you're seeing this activity all around the world. And again, it goes back to our original vignette for tonight on the topic of the death of the Piscean age. That's all part of the death of the Piscean age. Can you imagine what China would be like if it was a democracy? Yeah. See. Okay, well, I think that's it for tonight, folks. It's 8:30. We better sign off. And we'll go upstairs and try to decorate the tree
Yeah.
and gather up our foodstuffs, and we'll call it an evening. We'll do our closing prayer, invocation. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you, David. That was very good.